we just have a few announcements to make. All right, we'd like to remind you to please kindly switch your mobile phone to silent mode throughout the session, all right? And however, do feel free to take photos and remember to hashtag 13th, all right, which is 13THWIEF, okay? And this session will be in English, so SIS devices are available at the entrance of the hall, which is on my right, okay? And also languages available for the SIS devices will be Arabic, Chinese, Mandarin, all right, and also French and Russian, all right? And we kickstart the day with a leadership panel, which is titled Identifying the Archetypes of Leadership and Their Unique Roles in Business. And joining us today, ladies and gentlemen, we have gurus in their respective field who will be able to shed more light on this subject. In the panelist lineup, we have Mr. Glenn Rolfsen, psychotherapist of Stamina Group of Norway, Yang Berbahagia Dato Muhammad Izani Ghani, Executive Director, Investments of Khazanah Nasional Berhad Malaysia, and also we have Mr. Joe Robrechts, Executive Chairman of Triamont Belgium, and Mr. Nico Barito, the Special Envoy of President Seychelles of Forum Small Medium Economic Africa ASEAN. And also, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Teymoor Nabili, the journalist and broadcaster, Singapore, who will be the moderator for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our panelists for today, for this session, and also our moderator. Dipersilakan.
Set up in a long, thin room, and I like that long rooms so you can get everybody in. Welcome. Good morning. Nice to see you all. I'm not sure if that's my microphone making that noise. Is that okay? Is that my microphone? Anyway, folks, good morning to you. Welcome to the event. We're talking about leadership today, as you can see from your notes, archetypes of leadership. Everybody has an idea of what leadership is about. We work in organizations, we work with other people, and we all have our ideas of what it means, but they're all probably different, because there are so many different ways of describing it. If you actually Google archetypes of leadership, you'll find an innumerable number of articles describing what that means, including the concept of archetype. What's an archetype? It's a standard image of characteristics that each person possesses. So an archetype of a leader might be Genghis Khan, the great man, the single guy who controls everything. Or it could be any number of different issues. And these are some of the things that our experts today are going to discuss. We're going to begin with each of them giving their sense of what the subject matter is about, their experience in the field, a quick 5-minute presentation, then we'll talk amongst ourselves for a short while, and then hopefully you guys will join in as well and give us your thoughts on what leadership is about, and maybe try and pick the brains of our experts here and learn something from them about what leadership is about. So without further ado, let's begin our initial presentations, and we spoke beforehand about who would go first. And Mr. Izani Ghani, Dato, please begin the process.
Thank you, Teymoor. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, WIEF, for this invitation. I must say that it's good to be here, and it's nice to see some familiar faces here as well. So I think to provide the context of this panel, I think let me introduce who Khazanah is. Many of you may know that Khazanah is a sovereign fund of the government. People call us sovereign development fund. I think it's a big mandate that we have from the government in 2004 or so, one of which is to make sure that Khazanah manage the assets of the government to the companies that they give to us well, and then alongside with that, we have to make sure that the companies that we have run efficiently, profitably, so that we can eventually give dividends to the government. And you may have heard that as early as 2005, we embarked on the GLC transformation program. It's a 10-year program, 2005 to 2015. And by now, we have made them to graduate already. And you would know which companies in the group. And I must say that the third mandate that we have, which is quite different initially, it was the mandate for Khazanah to have footprints beyond Malaysia. So initially, in 2004, we have almost, I would say 100%, it's 99.2% or so, assets in the country. From then on, as early as we got the mandate, we started to have presence in the region. From then on, we opened our office in Beijing in 2008, and then Mumbai the same year. And then in 2013, Istanbul office, San Francisco office, and eventually 2 years ago in London. So the mandate to have the footprints in the region and globally was there. And then lastly is on human capital development. So why I said that, because it has some relevance to the topics here. It's about the archetypes of leadership. So for us to carry the mandates, so we need to have strategies in the group, to make sure that somebody will do the value creation plan for Khazanah. And we need the turnaround managers among them to make sure that the companies that we have, as I said in the program of transformation, we need people to transform these companies. And it's, I would say, a specific skill set that needs to be acquired and trained to be able to execute the task. And of course, we need transactor, people who can transact, do the mergers and acquisitions, so that we can grow and create values in the companies. And of course, we need coach as well, someone who can spot talents and make use of the best ability in each talent to execute as a team. So with that, the archetypes of leadership is there, as I mentioned. So I wouldn't take too much time, Teymoor, and we'll pass to the rest to elaborate further.
But you set the scene nicely. So at the moment, the focus, if only fairly broadly, is on individuals displaying certain qualities to lead larger numbers of people towards a stated goal. Now, we'll get into the details of those qualities first, but let's go to Joe and get a little bit from you. Is it all about individuals, or is there a broader definition here? And you have your own archetypes of leadership as well. So please tell us what those are and lay the framework for us.
Thank you, Teymoor. Dear Excellencies, dear participants. I believe that leadership is the art of defining, of shaping the future together. The art of shaping the future together is not a science, and it's about integrating the future into today, and you do that as a team. But the leader has to be the key person, man or woman, in shaping that future. The world is changing at a rapid pace. We heard that several times today, and at the days before at this conference. And the key thing is that change is accelerating. So as a leader, it's eat or to be eaten, create a disruption yourself, or being disrupted. And when you go deeper into this, it reminds me to 1999, when I had to do some thinking, preparing a panel about a leading entrepreneur. And I was thinking, in fact, it's about a consecutive process of 6 things. In my language, 6 D's. Dromen, denken, durven, doen, doorzetten. And when I translate this in English, it's about dream, think, dare, act, persist, and share. And I don't have the time within my 5 minutes, to go much deeper into this, but I understand that we'll have a discussion during this hour. But dreaming, it's there where it starts. And we hesitate often to dream, but I believe it's the key. It's envisioning the future. And how we do this, I think it's nice for the next hour. And as soon as you have envisioned the future, derive a bold mission. And in our case, we have chosen a bold mission with a huge societal impact. Thinking is converting this into a plan, is clarify the values for those who go with you, and is setting the example as a leader. Daring, there are a number of steps. And one of the key steps for me tomorrow is behave like a scientist. Experiment like hell. That make the difference. It's the difference for Apple, Google, and the other Facebooks and the Alibabas today versus all the others. That made the difference when Thomas Edison was capable of taking one patent after the other, but had done 10,000 experiments. Act, of course, is enable your people to act, is make it happen. Persist is the next step, the don't give up from Churchill. And finally, share. When I translate this to our model in the minute and a half that's left to me, I'll do that on the next slide. We created a shared vision. We wanted to have an impact on the world by making the world a better place, starting from places with real heart, to help people to live as long as possible, as healthy as possible, a happy life. And therefore we create neighborhoods, vibrant neighborhoods, welcoming, hospitable, vibrant neighborhoods, whereby we bring together a mix of generation with a focus on the elderly, a mix of generation with adjusted infrastructure, but the real focus is on autonomy, on keeping control over your life till the last day, also when you're getting in need of care, and at the same time on vitality, on the low-risk, healthy lifestyle, because that means these two together with a third important element, being bonding, anchoring, relationships, are the three key components for not only for healthy aging, but for a higher quality of life. And we want to offer that, on the other hand, with professionals in the back as a fallback around the clock and tailor-made, but going to an integrated life approach where your lifestyle is assisted by the community, the neighbors, the family, the friends, and an original model of volunteers leading to optimal quality of life. In the 10 seconds that's left for me, we're basically in the life-changing business, creating a new neighborhood model and turning it to higher quality of life and at the same time longevity, and supported by an online program. So I'll stop here, my time is up.
Joe, thank you, and it's a great start. Two slightly differing visions. Izani was speaking specifically about developing skills within individuals that would enable them to help the group go forward. And Joe was talking about the art of shaping the future together. Not necessarily conflicting values, but a slight shift of emphasis, a slight difference in emphasis. And we'll explore that in a moment. Let's get a slightly different perspective. Ambassador Nico Barito is from a very small country, the Seychelles, but has experience in big global organizations as well. And tell us about the differences in leadership and interaction in those environments.
Thank you, Teymoor. Good morning. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, it's a great honor for me to be here. I mean, Seychelles is very happy to be in the beautiful country of Kuching. And we are good friends and special partners of World Islamic Economic Forums that we are happy to co-host the WIEF International Advisory Panel Board meeting in Seychelles this year. Friends from WIEF have been to Seychelles. Those have witnessed our small country. What can we do being a small country? How did we manage a good leadership in a small country that flies Seychelles to a high name in tourism today, for instance, okay? I don't know if everyone knows Seychelles. Anyone don't know Seychelles in the room? Okay, then we have to compliment to those who don't know. Seychelles is a group of 115 islands in the Indian Ocean, sharing the same Indian Ocean between Malaysia and Africa. We have good connectivities today. We are happy that traveling from Malaysia to Seychelles is easy. And I think we have about 14 destinations that is served by Seychelles, intra to Asia, to the Middle East, Europe, as well as to Africa. So connectivity is not a problem to Seychelles. Anyway, let me make it brief and short. If you look at a small country with 100,000 populations, we really have to aim with a dream, like what our friends there mentioned. Leadership should become a dream, that we need really to create something new, innovative leaderships in the government sectors. And then when you talk about leadership for future, we also have to create innovative visions for the youngster. Otherwise, the youngster will go to other countries because they feel living in island is boring. And then we need to create ourselves as a hub, not only looking at our 115 islands and 100,000 populations economy. So we can become the hub of Africa, ASEAN, we can become the hub of international finance, and we can become the hub to anchor the youth, young leadership programs. So President of Seychelles have been very innovative, and I'm very proud under his leadership that we create something important. We start what we call blue economy, for instance. This is a new leadership style, which is now adopted by many small islands, because when the big country like Malaysia is talking about green economy, because you have your resources, you have your forests, you have the mineral resources, you have your oil and gas. But what do Seychelles have? We have 115 islands, but a big 5,000 miles of oceans. But we don't consume so much ocean values. We don't pollute our ocean. The management and the leadership of environmental care, citizen care for environment have been there from the early childhood. So are we preserving the ocean for ourselves? No, we are preserving it for the neighbors, for the world. The oceans belong to the world. So that is why we need to get a value back from what we call blue economy. Not like the land-based country is talking about green economy. The second approach that we do is 3 years ago, we developed a forum called Forum of Small Medium Economy Africa ASEAN. And under these forums, we are looking at how Seychelles can be a facilitators, can be a leaders to build small economy. Because we are a small country, so we focus on small economy. And small economy leadership is trying not to get the small become too big. Because when the small become too big, they lose the value. Then it becomes a macro economy. So what we have to do is to create always a genuine micro economy where the people really have the added value and sell high, added value chains, and not to become a conflict with the macro economy. So this way, the SME can be also a facilitator, an alternative of an economy which generate income for many of the countries, especially in Africa and ASEAN. You see, Africa have 1.2 billion players there. ASEAN have 680 millions there. So I mean, about 55% of the national economy of all these countries are generated from SME, if I'm right. So I mean, based on that, I mean, we focus on all these few sectors, and tourism in Seychelles, as you know, is very well. It is a destination of paradise. It is a destination of niche clients. But again, also, our leadership plan that Seychelles don't want to be overbuilt. Because once we overbuild Seychelles, we degrade the value. So we want it become a privacy destination. But what do we have? We have a good brand image. Seychelles has been known. So what I do, I outreach to my friends in Malaysia, I outreach to my friends in Indonesia and Vietnam, and I tell them, hey, you have so many small islands in the Orient. Let us share our leaderships on how to cultivate your small islands to have high income for the people. If a country like Seychelles can have high income per capita, why can't we share this with other islands community in the Orient? As of that, I'll return it back to Teymoor. Thank you.
Nico, thank you very much. And again, some interesting, slightly different emphases here, talking about leadership, not only in the context of the individuals we were talking about, but also bringing in this idea of stewardship, leadership as stewardship, and also management, not only of people, but of resources as well. So a few additional wrinkles to that as well. And our final presentation, Glenn Rolfsen is a psychologist, or are you a psychiatrist? Psychotherapist, which brings a really interesting dimension to the concept of leadership, because then we start to look within, and we start to look at the interactions between individuals as well as elements in this conversation. Please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency. All the way from Norway, it's my first time in Asia and first time in Kuching, so I was really looking forward first and foremost for the food. And yesterday at the official dinner, I was served Norwegian salmon. It was interesting. But I've tried different courses as well. A couple of years ago, it was a quite large survey that tried to figure out what is working life quality. And they found out it was 4 ground elements that determines our working life quality. And first is our personal life quality. So if my wife is cheating on me, if I have economical difficulties, if my daughter don't want to go to school, if my mother has cancer, it will affect me on stage right now. Do you agree? And the second element, that was relations to colleagues and leaders. This was the second element. So if I have difficult relations with my leader, it will affect my working life quality. The third element that we talked about is the sense of achievement, of mastering task. This is important for my working life quality. So if I've been upstage right now and didn't know anything about leadership, I would be in trouble, right? So the fourth element is the sense of usefulness. Am I useful to the society or to the customers of the company or to my colleagues? So this is the 4 ground elements of working life quality. And as leaders, we could look at the second element, that is relations to colleagues and leaders. Another question. Think about if some of you heard some rumors about me. Some rumors about me being incompetent, being a bragger, being a liar, just before this talk. Do you think that would change your image of me? And this is my main topic these last years, is what happens in a company or in a team with people that are talking negatively about each other behind everybody else's back, also known as backbiting. And I think backbiting is one of the most common issues all around the globe in companies that are not really successful. So this is also an element to this leadership, how to work with companies that are unhealthy and toxic for the workers. Because leadership is about relations, I think. Thank you.
Glenn, thanks so much. And it's a great introduction, folks, because we've seen the question now addressed from 4 obviously related but very different angles. And the idea that your personal state of mind is important in this whole conversation, I think, is a fascinating concept, because Joe spoke at the beginning about his process and his archetypes involved in the idea of leadership. But what does a leader do when there is someone in the room who has a mental state that is not in tune with the goal of the organization or the team in general terms? How do you address that kind of thing? And what sort of leadership is best in the context where there is conflict, of backbiting, of indiscipline, if you like? So let's consider some of these issues. Folks, we'll have a quick chat amongst ourselves first, and then hopefully you can get involved. There are microphones on the floor on stands, and there's people wandering around with microphones in their hands. So please either walk up to the stands and make yourself known, and you can join in the conversation, or put your hand up and someone will bring a microphone to you. But let me just begin by throwing a few questions to our panel. And let's begin, Joe, with your series of elements that go into that consideration. And the question I want to ask you is, given that, as Glenn has pointed out, there are within any working environment lots of people with lots of different approaches, heterogeneous agents within that working environment. How can a leader manage a process where not everybody is on the same page with certain things? I mean, you've given a nice outline of the elements that are necessary in that calculus, but in the heat of the moment, in the working environment, it's hard to sort of go through the process and say, okay, how can I fit in my current circumstances to my framework of priorities? How would you address that, Joe?
It's a very, very good question, Teymoor. It's a constant task, I believe, for a leader to be very attentive for that. The number one thing where it starts for me is in the recruitment process. We have chosen to recruit with a huge diversity in terms of backgrounds, in terms of sectors, widely out of our own sector or combination of sectors in terms of experiences, ages, and so forth, because of the confrontation of ideas. And that, of course, you're organizing by means of saying the fact that people will not always be on the same page, but that's very fruitful. But the key thing is we want to have people who have a very open mind and who are flexible in thinking and flexible in the next step in terms of the execution, the thinking, the brainstorming process, and finally, after the decision, the execution. So if you first recruit the ones whereby the attitudes are right, the values are right, because there it starts, after all, the values. And the first value for us is responsibility. In other words, the ability to respond, the ability to be part of a greater good and to take your stand, your responsibility in that, combined with agility and a kind of entrepreneurship, but at the same time, and that's key for us, integrity, and a couple of other values like passion. Passion does a lot in terms of, but
you're demanding a huge range of capabilities within each individual. People who go to an interview for a job, Izani, I mean, obviously you have this all the time.
Yeah.
No one's going to have all those capacities at the same time, surely.
Yeah, I think what's important is that I have to relate to my situation. For example, in the corporate scene, I think a good leader should be able to identify the strengths of his team, of his leadership team. Then only you can really.
Could you just speak a little bit closer to that?
Yeah, then only you can assign the right task to the right team, to the right person. Then hopefully you build enough trust in your team. Eventually, the team can gel together very well. And by doing so, by instilling the trust, and then get them to work together, hopefully no ball will be dropped. So I think it's important for you, as a leader, to really identify and develop that trust among the team.
Trust is a great subject to bring up here. Glenn, you've got a great story about a leadership exercise Glenn does with some of the people he works with about trust. Go on, tell us about that.
Okay. I got this leadership training, and then I got like 10 leaders lining up in front of each other, and I asked them to put their hands in front of themselves. And then I put like a light stick on top of their fingers.
One long stick across all 10 guys. Yeah.
And they have two rules. They should never let go. There should also always be contact with the stick and the fingers. And the stick should go down. And 99 of 100 times, this stick goes up.
So you tell them to lower the stick, but actually it ends up going up.
Yeah. And I asked them to try again, and it goes up again. And then I asked them to discuss what happened. And they all start blaming each other. It goes like this. And after they blamed each other for a while, I asked them if they would like to try again, and they said, yes, but he's too high and she's too short, so we have to change. And this happens in companies when things goes wrong. We change teams. But it's not about that, I think. It's about trust, because everybody is so occupied with what the other people are doing, so the stick goes up. So when people are trying to figure out who is taking the stick up, and I could ask them one by one, did you want to take the stick up? No, no, I took it down. Did you? No, no, I took it down. Did you? No, no. So who did it? Oh, it's the stick. It's a magical stick, Glenn. No, it's not a magical stick. Newton has right. Thing goes down. So when I ask them to breathe and really trust their companion, almost every time it will go down, and I think we'll all learn some lessons about it's so easy to.
So what you're saying is that there should be no leader. Everyone should just.
I think the leader's role is to create a safe environment for people to bloom and people to also.
Okay, let's get some reaction.
I'm tempted to jump in this. I think, no doubt that eventually you were saying the trust will be there, will be built, and eventually people will put down. But before you build that trust, a leader should emerge in that team. Should emerge in that team, so that, okay, look, team, we have to bring down simultaneously. Then you get it done faster.
Nico.
Well, I think I should compliment this about leadership issues. I mean, in the public sectors, in the private sectors, it's a little bit different issues, right? In the community leaderships, I mean, we have a lot of more issues to think about, right? We have public sectors, we have private sectors, we have to see how we can group our community, our populations, right? I mean, looking from the socio-economic group, socio-political interests, you know. So it's not easy to get everyone under the same boat, you see.
But surely trust is vital in those circumstances.
Well, trust is there, I mean, but you see, it's a matter about what is tomorrow. For some guys, tomorrow is another day. I only need breakfast, I only need food. For the other guy, tomorrow is another political contest. I want to become the leaders. I want to become someone superiors, you see. So the businessman said, tomorrow I want to become the macroeconomy. I want to become the giants of the economy to control the peoples, you see. So, I mean, it all depends on the group of people. So, I mean, you're not going to put the people who is expert in football to become a badminton players, right? Because they play in the group, right? So you cannot bring them to become individual contestants, you see. So, I mean...
So are you suggesting there needs to be a strict hierarchy of people with defined roles?
Exactly. A defining of objective of groups under a leadership systems. Then we can have a very parallel movement. Yeah. Otherwise, then, we are putting everything on the competitions.
Glenn.
Yes, Mr. Barito, I think you're into something really interesting. And it was a great philosopher named Kierkegaard, he's a Danish philosopher. He wrote a poem about the true art of leading. And he says that if one is truly to succeed to leading a person to a specific place, you must first and foremost take care to find him where he is and begin there. In order to truly lead someone else, I must understand more than him, but first and foremost understand what he understands and what he wants. So I agree.
There was another famous philosopher, Lao Tzu, who said, if you want to lead the people, walk behind them, yes. Which is an entirely different approach.
Yeah. Well, actually, I can add up to that. Actually, I mean, when you look at community, you look at people's, leadership is also about focusing on the local wisdom, right? So, I mean, there are people who didn't go to school, they don't have enough higher level educations, they don't go for advanced education, but they have talents. Yes. And talents is also a leadership skill, yep. You see. So sometimes we forgot that we learn from the older people, from our ancestors. At that time, they are not at the digital age, but we still learn from them. And there is a lot of best practice that come out from local wisdoms, and we have to admire local wisdom. So, I mean, this is one core of leadership, I think. So don't forget about the native local wisdom leaderships. Thank you.
Joe, weigh in, please, on the environment. I mean, we're talking about the people within the environment, but often the reality is that we go into new environments where the culture is already shaped and the behavior is already shaped. How does the environment in which we operate affect our view of leadership and the leaders within it?
Well, definitely significantly. Your question is a question about change management, in my view, which is, of course, a different type of environment than an environment you start to shape yourself from the start, from the beginning. My experience is that there are not only different leadership styles, but it's a function of, yes, environment, and it's a function of who is the person himself. I think that within our organization, we hardly treat two people the same, because it depends upon where you are in your development process, where you are in terms of your thinking, in terms of your, let's say, fitting into the purpose. And again, I think even in, it's more difficult in an organization with, where the rules are all set before, but even there, and also there, having a clear sense of purpose and bringing that through the organization from the top to the bottom and back with a lot of feedback, brings people on the same wavelength. And although we can differ in opinion, we can still be on the same wavelength. And therefore, purpose on the one hand, where do we stand for? Where do we want to make the difference as an organization? And how can I contribute within the values described? That's key. So if I cannot stand behind what the organization is going for, then I shouldn't be there. I'm sorry. If I'm a basketball player and I want to play basket while it's soccer that day, or that team is in a soccer competition, you can be the best basketball player, but please go to a basketball team.
But change in this digital disruption age is necessary. You don't go into a company saying, okay, I'm just going to sit down and conform to the existing status quo, do you? And in so many conferences you go to now, there's a change panel that's involved because we need to change. Glenn, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, because like you said, Joe, now we're into ethics, actually. And I think that we could also use the concept of leadership in a wider response, because we could also say that becoming a good leader, you need to be a good role model. And also, if you take this concept a bit further, because I was reading a Malaysian newspaper on my plane down here, and I read that a big UN survey said that 7 out of 10 Malaysian children were afraid of being bullied. It was really amazing. And I think that as a role model, we need to be ethical as leaders, we be ethical at our workplace, and we need to be ethical as grown-ups, because we are living in a world that is changing and is disruptive, and I need to have a focus on that, I think.
Well, I would like to comment on that a little bit. I mean, we are talking about leadership in the structured organizations. It's something different when you talk about leadership today. I mean, we are discussing these few days in this forum about entrepreneurships, young entrepreneurships, creative economy. At the olden days, when I start to work, I come to the office on time. I have to put my absence. I cannot work without a system because all is structured. Today, everyone is encouraged to become entrepreneurs. Now you can operate with the laptops and you have your home office. With your own laptop, you become your own entrepreneurs. You become your own leaderships, you see. So at the end of the day, you are making yourself a leadership. Are you buying still by the structure of all these human resources development leadership emphasized about, right? So I think leadership in the next generation should be talking about common interest groups. Yes. I mean, are you an IT group? Are you an individual entrepreneurs? Are you an artist? You see, so are you a culinary man? So everyone has to have a common system of leadership, brain and bridge under the system. Yeah, otherwise then it won't work, the organization system.
Let's bring in the audience into this conversation. Folks, as I say, there's microphones at the front. Please step up if you have a question. Gentleman over there.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm Dr. Ghazali from Malaysia. I listened with interest with the discussion of the panel. I am a former consultant and director of strategic planning of International Bank. My question to all of us today, when we are in this World Global Conference, we are talking about the relationship of nations, companies, communities, and citizens. That being said, therefore today, there should be a civilizational trilogue between the new emerging economies, whether it's Russia, India, China, Western world, or the Muslim world today. My contention to all of us today in this great hall, what is common denominator of us, all in this room? It's not gender, but mankind, individual. My point of view is that we cannot live in terms of the disruptive change, thinking it's a mechanical process. Fundamentally today, in the current pursuit of our success and notion of happiness, it has been too much of materialism, hedonism, because the question coming from Norway or Danish, they are not the Anglo-Saxon domination view of the world. My point to be, the contribution of WIEF today is to put man accountable to all levels. One, to himself, second, to the environment, and third, to the citizen. And if we do not put what Stephen Covey talks about, my question is that the other element, leadership has the highest level is God consciousness. Irrespective of your theological differences, God consciousness is fundamental. If CEOs today do not behave in their character, thinking they are beyond themselves,
all right, let's
you
get
cannot
some
read the
response from our
question.
panel.
Thank you very much.
Anyone want to take that on?
Well, I can try to address that. I think that's why, as a leader, you always try to do the right thing. Because when you do the right thing, nobody can question anymore. It's tough to do the right thing. But as long as you continue to do the right thing, you have no one to answer to, because you always try to do the right thing. But I know to do the right things, a lot of challenges. Tough. But if you continue to persevere and deliver outcome based on doing the right thing, I think you will continue to
So not necessarily God, but an ethical construct of some kind. Yeah. Thoughts, anyone else? Okay, let's get a different question.
I would like to comment still, if I may. I think it's about, indeed, if I follow my colleague, it's about integrity on the one hand, and on the other hand, a view of sustainability being three things for me. That is social, ecological, and economical. And for us it means social innovation, ecological efficiency, and economic profitability. And the combination at all times of these three. Two is not enough. If you let yourself guide by sustainability, you go for the long term by definition. You go for life cycle thinking. You go for quality. You go for everything what is sustaining the earth, the people, and at the same time the profit, because we also need that in order to be there the day after tomorrow. And I think that's an important one. And also following up on my colleague, an internal compass which tells you, are you feeling that you're doing the right thing? And in terms of if you transfer that to people, you can do what you're good at, you can do what you're passionate about, you can just do what your profession is, or you can do what the world needs. The key thing is to do the four at the same time. Okay. As a person and as an organization.
Fantastic. Since we're running out of time, I'm going to take a couple of questions at a time so we can get as many as we can in. Please.
Thank you, Teymoor. Peter Drucker said two things. Yeah, management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. He also said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I'd like to ask the distinguished panel to comment on this, and more specifically, I'd like to ask your Robrechts to talk about Paul Janssens as a leader. For background, Paul Janssens is potentially the most successful life science European entrepreneur. Thank you.
And let's take the other question from the lady behind you. Please, folks, step up. There's another chap there. Please, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. So my question is in regards to backbiting, which Glenn, you mentioned. And I would also, there's two aspects of the question. First is, what's the thought process that goes behind it? And second is there a difference between a for-profit organization, that environment, versus a not-for-profit? Because my personal experience is when I'm in a not-for-profit setting, that seemed to be a lesser, sort of backbiting kind of environment. Now, I would like to hear a bit more on Glenn, but also how the panel, how do you experience backbiting in your spheres? Thank you.
Okay, let's address those two. Gentlemen, please. Which aspect interests any of you on these questions? Go ahead.
Okay. Peter Drucker said still something else, which is very related to that. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't manage him to drink. And that's the answer for me, the difference between leadership and a manager. Regarding a second question, I understand you read my CV. So indeed, I had the enormous chance to work together with Dr. Paul Janssen, who was the founder of Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which has become today the whole pharmaceutical part of Johnson & Johnson. And Dr. Paul, like we called him, was a leader by example, really a leader by example. He didn't say many things. When you met him in the elevator, he basically asked one question. What are you busy with? What are you doing right now? And as a young guy, when you're 24 and you meet the big boss of the multinational, it's a pretty confronting question when you have 30 seconds in the elevator to answer that, and you were not aware of that question before.
Okay. Glenn.
Yes, Miss, I think you're right. When we see to non-profit organizations, there are less backbiting. I have a lot of things to say about backbiting, but because of the time. But again, the philosopher Socrates met an acquaintance on the street, and the acquaintance said, "Hey, Socrates, have you heard the latest news about your friend?" And he said, "No, but before you tell me this news, I want you to pass a little triple filter test." Okay. First question, is what you have heard about my friend, do you know if that's the truth? No, I don't know, I just heard about it. Okay. Second filter, is what you're going to tell me, is it something good? No, actually, the opposite. Okay. The third filter, is what you're going to tell me, is it useful for me? No, it's not useful. And then Socrates said, well, I don't want to hear it at all.
It's a lesson for journalists everywhere as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'd like to comment on the leadership in the profit organization and non-profit organizations. Well, I mean, being a senior official in the UN for many years, so I work closely with profit and non-profit organizations. I mean, well, wherever you come from, I mean, still there is a different challenges in leaderships. A profit organizations, you can talk about targets and revenue. You can talk about corporate structure, you can talk about management systems, and then you can talk about rewards and incentives to the staff members. But then when you become a non-profit organizations, then you are more living on a lot of vision and mission, where you work more not on profit-oriented, right? So then you have volunteers. To manage volunteers is not easy, you see. You need a special leadership to manage volunteerships. Did you see so many international organizations today, which some are affiliated with me in UN that I started 10 years ago? They still survive. And I met quite a few of these people, and they said, Mr. Barito, we are still carrying on with your missions. Are you paid? No, we paid from our own pockets. So it's motivations, you see. So leadership can be about reward in the profit sectors, but in the non-profit sectors, we are talking about the visions, you see. So, I mean, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, and I think one more thing is, like, non-profit organization is a lot of idealistic people. And this is the hardest group to be a leader for, I think, because they're so idealistic.
Yeah.
It's a good thing, and it's hard.
Yes.
Izani.
I think generally, regardless whether non-profit organization or profit-oriented, my observation, perhaps personal, I think generally if you have enough tasks for your staff to do, they have no time to do backbiting. My observation.
Okay, let's take another question.
Hello. Yeah, this is Tanvir. I'd like to introduce myself as an entrepreneur, and I'm from Bangladesh. Actually, you're talking about like role model, ethics, values, trust, those things. So actually, I've been grown up with values and good norms. But being a role model, like being in a country like where it's a developing country, so sometimes I see that like we need to go through some malpractice values or anything. So at the end of the day, the man in the mirror, he knows that if I want to be a like role model or leader, everything should be good. But I myself, I know that like something is going wrong. So what will you suggest for that? Like, what should I like? What will you suggest? That's my question. Thank you.
How do you handle internal conflict?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
distinguished panel, Nick from 360 Virtual Reality. We are part of a lease call. So I have a question. Since the topic is on disruptive, and we have a very distinguished panel of a very diverse background, can I just direct the question to maybe to Dato and also to Mr. Joe? Like for Dato, like how do you identify, really creative leaderships who, are making change? How do you identify them based on absolute leadership or more on the creative? As for Mr. Joe, I mean, you have been doing innovation work for the last 35 years. But how do you, on your end, identify leaders in an Asian context?
specifically in an Asian context.
We are in Asia, right?
Okay, let's just begin with the internal conflict one. Glenn, if I could put that to you. I mean, even those who have particular qualities also have particular weaknesses which may be related in some senses. How do you deal with situations like that?
I wish I could answer that in a quick and a swift way, but I don't think that's possible. But I think we need to acknowledge the problem. It's like, could you send me this ball? It's not there, it's possible to send it. So we need to address the issues to talk about it and not sweep it under the carpet. But that's not a good question, I hear myself.
Dato.
Okay, thank you.
To address a specific question from the gentleman, I think in addressing the disruption due to technology, at least in our group in Kazana, we have taken initiative to launch a project called TIDE, Trending Innovation, Disruption and Entrepreneurship, to make sure that our leaders, our team members, are aware that disruption can really affect the business. So we want our leaders to make sure that they embrace technology, look at the business model, whether technology can really affect the business. So we've started this process, and hopefully, with these challenges that we have, the challenges of the technology to the companies that we have, they will quickly embrace and start to plan how to address in terms of addressing the business model that we have.
Well, I just try to respond about the role model issues just now and the internal conflicts. Well, I mean, you come from Bangladesh, you come from a family, right? I mean, then sometimes the role model have some implications also with the background. I mean, you are the third generation, the second generations of the family business, or you are trying to start something on your own. So there is always a gap in leadership that I notice in a family business, for instance. So maybe the parents, the ancestors started the business by talents and by their own capacity. And the youngster come in after they graduate from Harvard and all this international advanced learning. So then these matters create a conflict with the older people who have been devoting the work with the family business for so many years, and we try to introduce a new management system. So I don't know if that answers your questions. I mean, is that what you really mean by hesitation in role models? I mean, so if that is the answer, I mean, it affects many community and many family business in general, especially when your family business grow big, then you try to implement a new system, you try to create a role model, then there is always a gap in between. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe.
Yes, it's a very broad, it's a very good question, and it's also a very broad question about training or developing leaders, because it's a constant process of development, whereby I believe that the various aspects of leadership need to be fostered. Amongst others, people motivate or inspire is a better word. Inspire people to nurture, to foster collaboration. Basically, to go through what I described before and what I'm using as a model, the Dream, Think, Dare, Act, Persist, Share model. Basically, your leaders of tomorrow need to have more or less from the six together, and maybe with special attention in the disruption phase we are as society about the dare. It's about constantly searching for opportunities in innovation. It's about taking risks, of course, calculated risks, but dare to take new steps. It's about experimenting, and it's also about, and I want to bring it up because maybe it's new for some of you, and you could disagree. That's why we are here, to agree and to disagree and to learn. But embrace failure. I basically learned that this year, when I was 2 days at Stanford University in Silicon Valley. Embrace failure. Applaud for failure. We learned there with a group of entrepreneurs, when we did something wrong, to say, wow, we did it wrong. Why? Because we learned that was the way to learn the most in the shortest period of time. So celebrate even failures, because next time you are very much aware of the fact how you shouldn't do it and what you learned the way to do it. And
I can give the questioner also brought up the issue of culture and differences in approach, and failure in the Asian management culture is actually not embraced in the way that you're talking about. Dato, you work across many cultures. Just very quick response to the idea of the cultural differences.
Yeah, exactly. I think understanding culture is very important. For example, when we had a new mandate I mentioned earlier on to expand our business beyond Malaysia, we wanted to go to China. China is a big opportunity there. So we thought that if you want to go to China, you have to have an office there. Because you need to understand the culture there. You have to mix with the locals. You have to get to know the stakeholders over there. You need to know the officers over there. You need to know business people over there. So hence, an easy decision for us, if you want to penetrate any new region, you have to have a presence. Hence the opening of office in Beijing and followed by, for example, in Mumbai. You have to understand the local culture.
All right, we're just about at the end. Let's squeeze in a couple more questions over there.
Assalamu alaikum, a very good morning. It's a very interesting note, celebrate failures. I did that with my daughter, but not very successful. Okay, I just want to, because we are talking about disruptive changes, I remember when I was having some interest in a bank in Bangladesh. I'm a Malaysian, but I represent Bangladesh today because I have some interest in a Bangladesh bank called Hutch Finance Company. I was 35 years old. I'm interviewing a managing director of about 58, 60 years old. I don't know what to ask them because they are more experienced than me. I realized that one of my lecturers from university is that if you want to know somebody, whether they're good or not, ask about the relationship with the wife. So this is really a question that I did. I asked him, sir, I just want to know, how is your relationship with your wife? How many times you go for holiday with your wife? How many times you argue with your wife? And who always wins? So this is reality. I did that 20 years ago. And number two, being a banker,
okay.
We were talking about Islamic conference here. I want to put some Islamic values that I have experienced when we were talking about the corruption in banking system. We have no formula we can say about every ethics and so on. You know what I did? With the vice president and the senior management of the company, I went to their house, being the vice chairman and also the shareholders of the bank. I went to their house, I have some dinner with them, and then they have two years old daughter. I call them, sir, this is your daughter. I want to tell you something. I said, look, your daughter is 2 or 3 years old. I will make sure that your daughter will not be successful in life forever and ever if you have committed corruption in the bank. And since we are Hajj bank, we send Hajj to Makkah every year. I will make sure 40% will pray Salat Hajjat in front of Kaaba to make sure your daughter and your family will not be successful in life forever.
Okay.
If you want anything, you ask me, I will give you. We have been very successful, and so far we are very successful. Now, my question is very simple. That's what I did, is disruptive change for the last 20 years that I did. Do you think this is a good value to ask the question in an interview? Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll come on to that in a moment. Please, next question.
Distinguished panels.
Very quickly, if you would.
Okay, 2 questions from me. Number 1, bodies of knowledge are growing at an unprecedented rate these days. In your opinion, how important it is for leaders to have domain knowledge? Or is it better to be otherwise? My second question would be in keeping with the theme of the forum, disruptive change. Decentralization is the buzzword. How have your organization coped with this decentralization? Thank you.
Answer. Please, go ahead, sir. You have a... Yes.
Okay, I'm Mohammed Aziz from London. I've got a question for Glenn and Sir Dato Mohammed. Glenn mentioned with regards to leaders having a stick on their finger going up, or they ain't going down, they're going up. So who are we going to follow, the leaders, or is this going to be a change for the NGOs to do? This is my question.
Thank you very much. Let's oh, one final, just very quickly, madam.
Hello. Assalamualaikum. I'm Nini from the Youth Trust Foundation. I'm just wondering, it's slightly gender specific. I'm just looking at the current deficit or gap of particularly women in positions of leadership. I would like to ask whether or not, what are the sort of gaps are we facing, and what are the sort of things are you implementing within your own organizations? And are we the ones hindering ourselves as women in achieving at least the 30%?
As someone who does a lot of panels, the number of women on panels is also extraordinarily low. when we do things like this. I mean, it's a constant problem. Finding women to come up and put themselves on the panel is often a problem too. Folks, we're out of time, so that swathe of questions is open to the entire panel. Let's take a word or two from each member to close out the session on those issues and final thoughts. Glenn, let's start with you.
I'm not exactly sure if I understand the question about this poll. Did you understand the question?
About?
What he asked about NGOs and the CEOs?
Not entirely. I thought you were listening.
I was. Maybe I could answer that in the break.
Just give us some final thoughts to wrap up the session in general from what you've heard from the questioners and from the rest of the issue. Glenn, if you would.
Yes, I appreciate the questions, and I would like to say I'm sorry that I'm not so clear that I could answer every question the way that everybody wants. But if someone is interested in looking more about this backbite concept, so it's possible to Google my name so they could see a recipe. It's on YouTube, on TEDx.
And maybe the specific questions they can approach you after this in the coffee break?
Fantastic. Yes, of course.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Well, I mean, I heard what questions just about decentralization and centralized management systems. I believe that each have its own advantages, okay, even in government. I mean, a decentralization process will create a lot of reformation, a lot of autonomy in the local systems, in the staff systems. But then in order to be there, you should be ready. I mean, you should have your good leadership, you should have a good system there. I mean, well, I believe that this has been a very good interactions that we have today. I mean, we are open for personal interactions, and I believe that leaderships have been one of the key issues which has been discussed globally today. But again, I mean, women is also taking a lot of leadership today. It's not only about on the podium, on the panels, you see, because we see that today there are more women leaderships, there are more women become ministers, women become prime ministers, presidents. I mean, so obviously there is a very open door in the global world today on women and even youth leadership. Thank you.
Perhaps my parting words, I would say that let's do the right thing the right way. The more all of us do the right thing the right way, I think we should get a better corporate world and better world in general. And I can assure you, if you do the right thing the right way, you can sleep better at night as well. Thank you.
Okay, the 4 questions. The first question, being anchored and bonded is, I believe, key for quality of life and therefore also key for operating in a professional environment, functioning in a professional environment in the right way. 2, about decentralization, I believe, and I've said it, that purpose and values can keep a company together, can keep a professional environment together and steer it in a certain way, while, and that's maybe a new point, while self-management is stimulated and is a guarantee for bringing up new views and new ideas. 3, the question about women, we love them. 2 out of 3 within Triamount, within the company, are women. And that's not by coincidence. Women bring, versus men, things to the organization which often men don't bring. Angles, ideas, ways of operating, ways of even the meeting changes when 1 or 2 women are in the room. It's very, very amazing each time for me, but it is true. And when I say 2 out of 3, it also means in the higher ranks of the organization to be complete. And finally, the question about follow the leaders. I would like to conclude with leadership, for me, is the art of shaping the future together. And together means as a team. And team stands for TEAM. Together, everybody achieves more.
Thank you for the comprehensive answers, and apologies to those people whose questions weren't fully answered. We didn't have so much time, but thank you for engaging and for participating. Ladies and gentlemen, please show your appreciation for our panel. And thank you once again for being here. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, another big round of applause for our panelists and moderator for this session. And may we have all our panelists and the moderator on stage for a group photo session. Silakan. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation, and we trust that this session had been edifying to everyone. And thank you very much once again to all panelists for navigating the subject matter, as well as harnessing the breadth and depth of the topic discussed. And do participate in the series of panel discussions and masterclasses lined up for the rest of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And also visit the exhibition booth at the exhibition hall level 1. And also please take note that there is a Mocha Fest performance at 2 p.m. later. All right, and also the lively Mocha Fest Soundscapes concert, which will be happening at 8 p.m. tonight right here. So hope to see you. And of course, have a pleasant day, everyone. All right, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our next session will be the Sarawak focus. So to those of you who would like to join us for this session, please be seated. And right after the Sarawak focus session, ladies and gentlemen, we have another panel discussion on mapping out tomorrow's business, also here at the same venue. So please take your seat and enjoy your session with us here right after this.